Welcome, Reanimated fans, to this week's episode. We are back from a little bit of a break. I had a much-needed vacation. Stuart did not. Hello, Stuart.
I'm not okay.
And I should mention, as always, I am one of your hosts, AJ Conrad, coming to you from Brooklyn, and Stuart's on the West Coast over there. And today we are going to talk about a few news items before jumping into our review of It Stains the Sands Red, which came out in 2017. And I have a few thoughts on this particular film. But before we get to that, do you want to kick off the news items, Stuart?
Yeah, sure. There's some pretty good news, honestly. I mean, it's October, right? This is,
yeah.
And these aren't even like October news items, but it's just there's good news right now. So, this is bad news. This first one.
Yeah.
Gizmodo's been reporting on the recent ratings for the latest season of The Walking Dead. I don't know if you've been watching them, AJ. You probably haven't had time because you've been on the road.
I have not.
So we're 3 episodes into as of recording, 3 episodes into the new season of Walking Dead, and apparently, when that season premiered, it premiered to the lowest ratings of all time for the show, yeah. And that follows hot on the heels of the lowest ratings for the finale of the previous season. So, apparently there's a pretty stark downward trend right now in terms of audience-ship for The Walking Dead Prime. A lot of it is being attributed to the imminent departure of Andrew Lincoln. And I would say more of it should be attributed to the Savior storyline, which I think was just dragged out way too long, like over 3 seasons or 2.5 seasons, an absurd amount of time. But that's, so we've talked a lot recently about like AMC's intentions for the future of the show and how they're like spinning it off into other things, and they want to take it to Europe too, is one possibility. But yeah, so what are your takeaways from this news?
I definitely think that the Andrew Lincoln departure is playing into this. I also think that given the number of shows that they've got going on here, like Fear the Walking Dead and The Walking Dead, and there is lots of stuff out there right now, and I just think maybe we are seeing that point where people are getting a little tired. I think that as we get to the end of this season where his departure actually comes, you're going to see a kick up in the ratings, but I seriously... And it's not just him. I mean, look at all the cast members. Look at the original cast and who's left and who will be left. And I think that people really don't want to see Rick Grimes leave, and they're upset about it. And I agree. I think that the storyline has definitely, that was just exhausted, and they need to figure out and pivot and do something different. And since they've delineated from the comics or the graphic novels so much, I don't think it takes that much to try to figure out a new path. And new ideas. So we'll see what happens, but this doesn't really shock me all that much. Not to mention that we are also, I think the other piece of it, we are in a month where there's a lot of competition. Basically, every streaming channel has a different group of things for people to watch during the Halloween season, during October. All of that started kicking off in like September, so much like Christmas. I just think that there's a lot of things that the particular audience is going to, there's distractions and competition for that, and everybody knows that they can watch this later, and that's probably what they're going to do. I don't know about you, but
I spent a lot of this fall already watching the Daredevil season 3, and can we just also talk for a moment about how Netflix is canceling Marvel shows, and do you find that to be as troubling as I do? Because even though Mortal Iron Fist and Luke Cage were not without their share of problems, Luke Cage with far fewer than Iron Fist.
Right.
I watched the hell out of all of those, and I think that's...
And I mean, in terms of characters, Luke Cage, I thought was a pretty strong show. Maybe it needed a little bit of direction in terms of storytelling, but in terms of characters and following, I just feel... I'm a little surprised that they canceled that.
Yeah, I mean, unless there's one theory out there that they're canceling those shows so that they could bring those 2 characters back in a Heroes for Hire show.
Maybe
make it, their buddy cop, their buddy hero, I guess story arc from the comics. That's probably a little far fetched, but yeah, just a bummer.
Well, it also could be. I mean, there's a whole thing between Luke Cage and Jessica Jones, so maybe there's a pairing of that in the future. Hopefully, because that was kind of fun. And we'll see what happens there. But yeah, that really bummed me out. Iron Fist not as much because I thought that was terrible, but. Um, but yeah, that's that is what it is.
Yeah, it's
Do you
it's a
want to?
shame. It sucks that we can't always see. Speaking of ratings, we know what the Walking Dead ratings are because there's third party people taking a look at that. But we have no idea with Netflix, so
Right.
it just makes it a little harder for us as outsiders to even have any sense.
Right.
But yeah, sorry. Enough with Marvel. There's no zombies there, although there
Well,
could be.
before moving on from the Netflix topic, do you want to talk about the chilling adventures of Sabrina?
Yeah, so just launched a couple days ago. Very recognizable female lead. I forget her name, but she was Don Draper's daughter in Mad Men, which
Yep.
sets her up perfectly for being like a badly adjusted teenager.
Yeah, and I have to say, so I was quite under the weather after coming back from my vacation, so much so that I spent the whole of Friday binge watching Sabrina, because that's all I could do.
Yeah, nice.
And so nice. And I have to say that overall as a show, it's pretty dark. It's nothing. If people think that this is anything like the original Sabrina, oh no, no, no. And I think most people hopefully got that through the trailer, but. I actually thought there were some really good things about it, and it's already been renewed for season 2, and they've already started filming it.
Other than the homage to Romero in the pilot, is there much zombie content? Have you gotten really far?
There is one specific episode with, and it's a significant episode with a zombie,
Okay, well, cool.
but it's
I don't know if
toward
we
the
can-
end.
We can cherry pick maybe one episode of that show to review.
Yeah. Well, we could do that. But in any case, I definitely think this is very much in the Halloween spirit. It is definitely it's in the. Have you watched Riverdale at all? It's a little bit of that tweeny feel, a little
They
bit
name
of that
drop Riverdale, don't they?
Yep.
One of the characters is like,
Well-
"Oh, are you talking about Riverdale?"
Well, because it's the sister comic. It's through the same graphic. It's like the Archie storyline.
So
and
they're in the same universe.
Yeah.
And Riverdale does have a zombie subplot, doesn't it?
Yep. And so I think that they're going to we'll probably see a crossover at some point, possibly. But I also think that this is much darker, and even though it may be in the same universe, it's a much darker universe. So, but it's a little tweeny, it's a little fun. It's also a little bit, it is there's a lot of tongue-in-cheek things going on with the devil worshipping and things like that.
Yeah, they're so nonchalant about Satan.
Well, and if you look at it in the vein of organized religion, it's just
Mm-hmm.
really interesting. So, and I think that's probably the point. But anyway, I had fun watching it. It definitely was a good distraction. So, let me know what you think about it when you finish.
Yeah, I'm just 1.5 episodes in, but yeah, I'm enjoying it so far, and I like the cast a lot.
Yeah, the
so
cast
far.
is great.
I can't remember any of their names, but also the British woman from The Office, the British version of The Office, as one of the aunties is.
Oh yeah,
terrific.
Lucy Davis.
Yeah, I love her.
But also, Eowyn from Lord of the Rings is in there.
Oh, is that the redhead?
Yeah, the aunt.
Wow. Yeah.
Auntie. Wait, which one auntie is it? What is it? Auntie Zelda. So
It's either way. It's a
something
fun.
Otto. Miranda.
It's
Otto?
a fun show. Oh yeah, Miranda Otto. That's her name.
Yep.
It's a fun
and,
show.
And Kiernan Shipka is the main title. Sabrina Spellman.
Yeah.
So
What's her name?
Kiernan Shipka.
Perfect.
So, but anyway, I think that people who are into this kind of thing will have fun with this. So it's very comic booky and graphic novel. I enjoyed it a lot more than Riverdale. I watched a bit of the first season, and we started to kind of watch the second season, and it kind of went off the rails. So we have not watched the rest of it. To me, this is like junk food. Television, it's not meant to be taken too seriously.
On the flip side, something that wants to take itself seriously but absolutely cannot is
goodness.
what might be the newest low in the zombie genre, which is a Lifetime movie
Yeah.
about zombies. Zombie at 17, and it is it's like Contracted. Is that STD one that we watched? Is that
Yeah.
the name of it? It's kind of like that, I think, except without the date rape angle. It's hard to say exactly what the transmission source was for this character. But
I guess we'll have to watch to find out.
yeah, we're going to include the trailer in the show notes, and do yourselves a favor and watch this trailer if you need a good chuckle, because it looks so bad.
Yep.
This is never going to be we're never going to review this.
No.
Please tell me we don't have to watch
but
this.
no, we definitely do not. But it is a Lifetime movie, so, you know. And speaking of new lows, somebody actually got paid to write a magazine about drinking wine during the zombie apocalypse. I just couldn't believe this. So, and basically it's a guide to what you should drink first and last.
Which is actually a pretty smart way to approach this. And they're approaching it. It doesn't have to be zombies. It's more about like what
aging.
wine is going to age better without air, refrigeration. And they're saying, make sure you drink all your Pinot Grigios and Sauvignon
And
Blancs
rosés first.
in the first year, and then move on to. I think this is actually pretty funny.
This made me laugh. It did. But still, the fact that it was written is like funny.
They're
But just
saying,
in time for the Halloween season, I suppose.
In year 30, we're just drinking Madeira.
Yeah.
No, this is pretty funny. We'll include this link too, and it's in Wine Enthusiast magazine, and I'm glad that they felt comfortable enough to put this together, because it's an interesting take on wine writing. If not, I mean, even if it is kind of dumb, we accept it. And that brings us to the end of news, HA.
It does. So we're going to jump right into it. It Stains the Sands Red is a film that came out in 2017. And we talked a little bit about it a while ago, just the fact that it was coming out.
We'd seen the trailer before it made it to the film festivals.
Yep. And, this got kind of meteor, like it got more over 50% on Rotten Tomatoes. And it was directed by Colin Minihan and stars Brittany Allen. And I would say more Juan Reidinger as the two main roles. And the premise of this is a normal one. During a zombie apocalypse, the main character, Molly, played by Brittany Allen, basically gets pursued across a desert by a zombie, played by Juan Reidinger, and she has named the zombie Smalls. And there is a lot that I laughed at during this film.
Yeah, it's got a fair amount of humor in it, which is kind of surprising. But it's a weird film structurally. I mean, it doesn't really have 3 acts, right? It's got 2 halves, probably.
Kind of 2 halves, yeah. But basically, the usual happens. They do somewhat of it's interesting the way they kind of play it. You get an inkling that Molly and, in the beginning of the film, her boyfriend Nick, they're getting away from Vegas, and they are supposed to meet people to fly out of the country. And there's a little bit of like sort of shuffling around the idea that there might be something wrong, because at first it seems just like a vacation, but then they kind of turn off the news because he's like, we don't need to listen to that. And so you get kind of an idea that something's wrong, and this is why they're leaving, not just for a vacay.
Yeah.
But
it's an interesting place to start a story in the zombie apocalypse, which is they already know that this is happening. Of course, they're not necessarily acting in a way that we would think of as being smart zombie survival, especially not Molly, because she's constantly doing coke and chugging vodka to the point that she's throwing up. But she does know, and so when they do run into the zombie very early on, she's like, you got to shoot it in the head, even though she is wasted or whatever.
There's the question that I initially had, which was, how did these two even stay together to decide to leave together? And they don't seem like a likely pair to survive, and in fact Nick obviously doesn't. But they do know enough of what's going on that, the other main character in this, Smalls, they know what he is, or that something's wrong with him. So it's not all that kind of trying to figure out what it is. So that I kind of liked. It
seems like Nick has ties to organized crime, or at least the underworld, based on Jimmy, who they run into later, who's just like a very, I don't know, a cliche sort of gangster it does. You're asking like how they could have survived as a pair of them, and I'm thinking maybe they are survivor types in a certain setting, maybe not in the
Yeah.
zombie apocalypse, but
I just some of the things that they do, getting the car stuck in the
Yeah.
sand
Yeah.
was silly. And those cars are not that heavy. And there is this point where, so basically she has to throw up. He pulls over into sand and they get stuck in like a little sand trap. And she's like, let's put wood under the tire. And he points, basically, there's like stumps. There is wood. There are rocks. There are other things that they could have used. And he's like, what are you going to do? And nothing. And then, one of the things that does bother me about this film, but you can also look at this, maybe it's done in a kitschy, humorous way, which maybe this is. And, but these zombies are not fast-moving zombies. They're very slow.
yeah.
And
I
they're
love the way
very
that this-
shambling.
yeah.
They're just sort of this constant creep, basically.
That's
And-
like one of the best things about this film is her
Right.
constantly mocking Smalls as she like walks just a few feet in front of it. It's
Yeah.
I mean, that's a lot of the film.
Yeah, but, the thing is that when he actually gets them, like, I liked how, they know enough about him to know to stay away from him.
Yeah.
Yet they're doing stupid stuff like going out at night without any precautions, and they're trying to get the phone and stuff like that, but some of it just feels like, okay, I'm just gonna wait for the zombie to come and eat me right now, like,
Yeah.
just so there's a little bit of the timing that I felt was just a little too much. And she tends to fall down a lot for no reason, just to give her
shoes are nightmares.
ridiculous. Yes. But there was stuff like that. However, the things that I liked about it, the humorous parts of it, there was like, and they could have, I feel like the only thing that could have been improved is if they improved the writing a little bit. Her performance in terms of talking to Smalls constantly, and now her relationship with him evolves over the course of her journey across the desert is really funny. And some of it not so funny, but he is just kind of like following behind her, relentlessly following her, and she's just kind of like, this is great cardio.
Yeah, and she's doing more bumps of cocaine and like
I know.
saying things like, I could probably walk all night. It was just cracking up when I'm watching
Yeah.
this like cocaine fueled slow motion high speed chase.
Chasing. I know. So
And it's really good. And there's some really disgusting, gross stuff, like the whole tampon scene, of course. So let's talk about this from a meta perspective for a second. I know we're still in the first half of the film. There's a real shift in gears. She goes from like, I guess, someone who most of the audience probably doesn't respect as like this party girl. And you have these flashbacks that involve a baby, and you're like, oh my gosh, she's such a bad person. What do you think of this film being about a woman and of having a female heroine, and it's all written by men is kind of the impression that I get. Did you feel like there was a disconnect there, or how would?
Oh, yes, I definitely did. And I feel like there's a big disconnect in terms of how you would tell her story. And I mean, I think obviously she's supposed to go through this redemptive journey, and there's a lot of things about her that you're not supposed to like. And I feel like her to me, if she's having all these flashbacks about her kid, she never would have left him in the first place. And I think they try to explain that a little bit. She's such a bad stripper mom and that kind of thing. And it's like, okay, just because this woman's a stripper doesn't mean she would be a bad mom, Like, I don't know. There's a lot of things about the story that I took issue with. And there is a rape scene in this that I thought was completely unnecessary. And just a little bit, not a little bit, a lot offensive. I don't know how you felt about it, but I just thought there was no reason to go that far.
I guess you could have intimated that it was going to happen, and
Right.
then have
That's
essentially the scene that you need to have Smalls go from villain to something else. Like it's from that scene that Smalls' role has changed from the biggest problem she has to something she can completely handle, right?
Well, true, but you could have done that without it actually happening to her.
Yeah, I agree with you. I agree with you that it could have just been like the scene. It was clear that something like that was about to happen, and you could have left it like that instead of going to the graphic element of it.
So yeah, and I feel like those elements are there because dudes are writing it. So yeah,
and they go to this tired part of the genre where they're saying, all right, these two young men, not unlike Nick's little buddies in Mexico, right, in Fear the Walking Dead, they've decided that because they can do anything now, they're going to rape and murder. And I have to think of the population that this is not really a realistic outcome. Not in a way that you're going to run into these people.
Well, they are convicts after all. So I guess that's how they got away with that. They already have loose morals because they were escaped convicts. So I think that's the implication on that they aren't just normal people who made this decision. But it's still, to me, it was an unnecessary piece. But you're right. I mean, in terms of that's how they kind of took the storyline to make, and also to make not Smalls just not only something she could handle, but somewhat of a weird ally. So that was kind of odd. And, she's kind of going a little crazy out there, which is cool. I do like how she utilizes Smalls as like a tool at some point.
Yeah, that's incredible when she goes from hauling the rubber raft
to making him haul it. That was
to
great.
Putting like a tire around his. I wish they'd shown how she managed to pull that off, but still, it was pretty cool.
Yep, I liked that. So there's things like that. And I do like how, in terms of her journey, she gets to the point where she's actually trying to protect him and then realizes at some point that he's just too far damaged and that he shouldn't be sort of wandering around like that. And so she does the mercy thing. Though I do have, in terms of like her goal of getting to the airport, that's been her ultimate goal, to get out. And we kind of know where the story's going through a series of flashbacks because she keeps flashing to the kid. She has a little bit of a conversation with Smalls about her kid. And so we learn a little bit more, and it's kind of a predictable thing. But, I kind of think she would have gotten there ahead of time, and maybe with her experience with the two guys in the truck, and after seeing sort of how this group of guys is acting, that she's kind of like, maybe getting in a plane with them isn't the best idea.
Yeah, they're clearly so. He's like, my engineer's been doing crank for 3 days or whatever. Yeah, so she makes a pretty good decision to not go with them. You also have the scene of her taking off her own finger when Smalls accidentally bites her, which means this is not something this character would have done at the beginning of the film. So we've already had this huge transformation.
Yep.
But then not getting on the plane takes us into, I guess, Act 2.
Yep.
And where she decides she's going to be Supermom.
Correct. And, I thought that when they showed her not getting on the plane, that they were going to just show the plane crashing to show even more of her
I was kind of waiting for that scene to happen, too.
Because he keeps talking about how the plane keeps stalling out. So I kind of thought that's where it was going to go. Yeah. But they did not do that. So, anyway. And then they had a pretty good, drill bit kill with the zombie. That was good. She
willingly walks into a warehouse with, I thought there were supposed to be more zombies in there. They only show 3, but I thought there were supposed to be like 4 or 5 in there. But and so that's why even after the drill bit scene,
I was expecting more too.
I was expecting her to have to fight her way out of there, but she gets that nice cherry red, whatever it is, convertible out of the deal, and hauls ass back to Vegas. Maybe I don't think we really know.
Vegas. It is Vegas because that shows that's the initial scene coming in.
Yeah, and
with all the fake CGI smoke.
There is a scene. There's along the way they have her like looking at the side of the road a couple times, and you see Nick as a zombie, but you also see Smalls.
Yeah, I think she's just.
Is she just like remembering him fondly, or
I
is
think
he actually still wandering around?
No, I think she's just remembering him fondly.
Okay.
Because she definitely took out his head with a rock.
Yeah, I wasn't sure if that was a scene that happened or not.
Yeah. This is some of the confusing storytelling that they do here and things they could have probably polished up a little bit. But then she gets back to Las Vegas and saves her kid. And we see her transformation's complete because she's about to take on a huge zombie horde to protect her kid. So that's kind of funny.
Yeah.
Not funny, but just how she's now like pretty much just badass.
The film started to feel very much like an allegory when suddenly the house is surrounded by zombies when you haven't seen any of them in the street. Like all of a sudden I'm like, oh, okay, we're in a storytelling moment instead of like a narrative. I don't know. It felt very weird and like, so yeah, the tone of the film has gone completely 180 from the beginning, which was much more realistic to more metaphorical, I felt like.
Yeah, agreed. And like I thought that overall I liked this more than I thought I would. There were definitely
Me too.
There were definitely some funny moments. I feel like the writing could have been tightened up a little bit and some of the storytelling could have been tightened up a little bit. But overall, I really liked the scenes between her and Smalls. I thought that it was entertaining and not as poorly done as I was anticipating. So some of it was a pleasant surprise. And that's the only thing I kind of thought was that she could have been a lot, I don't know. Could have done a little bit more with her character than they did.
It probably would have been a good idea to get a female voice in the writing room. Like, just get somebody who can speak to the subject matter with a little more. Like this, she's the only living character on screen for most of the film.
Right.
So having a woman in the credits who's a producer or something would have been a pretty good idea.
Yep, I completely agree with you, and I thought it felt like a very male-told story overall. And not a very well done one,
probably. Like,
and not a very well done one either.
Yeah,
so, like, come on.
And you know what? This is to like underscore this point. Now that Angela Kang is the showrunner for The Walking Dead Prime, I'll be interested to see that. Like, look back at this season compared with the previous ones through that lens. You know?
Yeah, definitely.
Because it's not something that you get that often. It's kind of a male-dominated genre of film and television.
And I think that there's a lot of people out there that could be contributing. We're slowly seeing women being more involved, but it's still pretty tight. I don't know. I still feel like it's much more male-dominated and a little bit closed when it shouldn't be.
Well, get out there, HA.
I know, right? Well, what are any other thoughts about this film? I mean, I thought that some of the makeup effects were pretty good. I think they used them pretty wisely. Though there were definitely times when I was kind of like, well, if this is supposed to be a virus or they're infected, it also seems like some people are infected in different ways than others. So I thought that was interesting. I felt like Smalls was very much a traditional zombie, but like horror film zombie.
Until he wasn't.
Right. Until he starts listening to her.
Yeah.
But I'm speaking more of the makeup and the slow walking and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So I thought that was kind of a cool departure from the usual. And
the fact that he got shot, 4 or 5 times in the course of the film, and eventually kind of like just runs out of gas.
Right.
Which was also a break from traditional zombie treatment.
That was kind of interesting. I do think that it's kind of cool when not cool, but just an interesting twist when the sort of, you feel your alliance is shifting because it's sort of like the army guys. You're like, okay, what's she gonna do? And she's actually protecting Smalls from them.
Yeah, which I had a hard time being in her corner on that scene.
Yeah, that's kind of weird.
And the fact that she still chooses to go to this airfield where she doesn't know that anybody's waiting for her, rather than just get in the Humvee with. I mean, maybe they would paint these 2 army guys as being
bad again. I don't know.
Our usual cliche of military bad and zombie apocalypse, but they seem okay. Like one of them is trying to get his boss to shoot the zombie because he's like, this isn't okay, we have to help or whatever. Yeah, so it wouldn't have been as interesting of a second act if she had just gotten in their Humvee and ridden off into the horizon. But it was a little hard for me to be like, yeah, stay with your zombie friend.
Right. And I guess my other thought about the whole film is that the things that I really enjoyed were some of the pursuit across the desert. And I feel like you could have made her transformation a little bit less annoying and tropey. And, you know, I don't know. The one interaction she has with other characters, or the few interactions she has with other characters, are not positive in general, other than with Smalls, which is kind of interesting. And eventually Chase, her son. So I kind of feel like if they had gone in a slightly different direction with the storyline, it would have been a more interesting one. Not making her like totally badass, but like, I don't know, her decision making at the point when she meets the army guys is kind of weird.
That is a little bit unrealistic. I would say though her interactions with Jimmy are fine. It's just that Jimmy is clearly not someone you'd want to get into an airplane with, or his mechanic.
Agreed.
So, like, I think that they dealt with that scene in a really smart way. They didn't beat you over the head with it by saying like, oh, and they're looking at her in a way that suggests they're gonna, you know, do what those other two guys did. That didn't seem to be part of it, but it might be down the road because these guys are wasted and about to get into an airplane and fly it to Mexico.
Yeah.
So good choices there. Good choices, Molly. Yeah. And instead, though, she walks into a warehouse filled with zombies and kills her way through them until she finds the car keys, and then drives to Las Vegas to kill a whole horde of them. I was pleasantly surprised.
I was pleasantly surprised, but even when she goes in to get them and get the car keys, like, she knows better at this point. I don't feel like she would have gone in there blind. I think she would have lured them out. You know, she knows enough at this point in how to deal with them and dealing with Smalls that I just don't think that this would necessarily have been the case. But I think they wanted it to feel like a video game and they wanted it to feel close. Yeah. But, you know, that's what I'm talking about with some of the storytelling and ideas. I think they just could have done a better job.
One thing that I did think felt a little off when she goes into that warehouse is she kills the first one, basically not easily, but she kills it effectively. Mm-hmm. And then she finds the second one who's still up and standing, and she like loses it. It turns around to look at her, and she drops her weapon.
And she falls on the ground, and
she falls down. I'm like, she's like, been hanging out with a zombie for days. Like, I don't understand why you would be freaked out by a zombie.
She falls on the ground, and it's like, okay, dude, jump on me. Oh wait, the drill is here. So that's the one that I took the biggest issue with.
Okay, yeah, that was a little odd, especially given her journey so far. Right. But otherwise, you know, now we're just, I feel like, nitpicking at these little things. But overall, it was a way better film than Patient Zero. Not to
agreed.
Bring up that
garbage travesty
fire.
Of agreed. So anyway, kind of fun tropey. Definitely not one for the kids though.
No.
Definitely not.
What have we reviewed that's for the kids? I'm just curious.
Well, there's things some are more appropriate than others, and I feel like this was definitely not. No. At least not without a trigger warning.
So AJ, I think next time when we get together, we should review Mayhem, the 2017 film that Mr. Steven Yeun went to do after he left The Walking Dead Prime, among other things. Also, Dallas Roberts is in that, who was also in The Walking Dead Prime. So that's curious. What do you think?
I think that's a great idea.
Well, terrific. Let's get together next week and review Mayhem, and then the week after that, we're going to try and do something we very rarely do and review something just after it comes out, because we're not usually that nimble and flexible.
True.
But we'll be so we'll do Mayhem, and then we're going to try and do Overlord, J.J. Abrams' World War II Nazi zombie film.
Sweet.
So much to look forward to in the month of October. Well, and November, I guess.
Yep.
So if folks want to weigh in on It Stains the Sands Red, you can get at us on Twitter at ReanimatedPcast. Our email address is reanimatedpodcast@gmail.com. And you can check out our show notes and the YouTube video for that Lifetime movie, because OMG, that's at reanimatedpodcast.com.
Until next time, ciao.
Bye-bye.